When we talk about dealing with toxic people, the very first and most powerful step is setting clear boundaries without apology. And here's the truth: boundaries are not walls you build to keep people out, they are guidelines you create to protect what matters most: your peace, your energy, your values. Think of them like the rules of your personal home. You don't leave your door wide open for anyone to walk in and rearrange your furniture, eat out of your fridge, or yell in your living room. So why would you leave your life wide open for people to take whatever they want from you emotionally? Now here's the part that makes a lot of us uncomfortable. Setting boundaries means you're going to have to say no. You're going to have to decline invitations, ignore manipulative texts, or stop picking up the phone for people who only call when they want something. And every time you do, there will be a voice in your head that says, "But won't they be mad at me? Won't they think I'm selfish?" And yes, some will. In fact, the people who benefited the most from you having no boundaries will be the loudest when you finally set them. But that's the signal you're on the right track. The people who truly care about you, who value you, won't be offended that you protect yourself. They'll respect you more for it. Here's where toxic people get exposed. They need access to you. They need your time, your attention, your energy, because that's the fuel they run on. Without it, they have no power. When you start saying, "I won't answer past this time," or "I can't commit to that," or "that comment is not okay with me," you take away their control. And the funny thing is, you don't even have to kick them out of your life. You don't have to scream, argue, or make some dramatic declaration. Boundaries do the work for you. Toxic people don't like playing where there are rules, so they'll leave on their own. The challenge for most of us is learning to set those boundaries without apologizing, because that's where so many of us get stuck. We'll say, "I'm sorry, but I can't make it," or "I hate to do this to you, but I can't help this time." We wrap our no in so much guilt that we hand back the very power we were trying to reclaim. And here's the shift: a boundary does not require an apology. You're not doing anything wrong by protecting yourself. Saying no is not cruel. Declining is not rude. It is simply telling the truth about what you can and cannot give. So instead of, "I'm sorry, I can't," try, "I won't be able to." Instead of, "I hate to say this," try, "That doesn't work for me." Clean, direct, and unapologetic. It might feel uncomfortable at first because you've been conditioned to believe your worth comes from saying yes, from pleasing people, from keeping the peace. But the peace you're keeping isn't real if it costs you your sanity. Let me give you a picture. Imagine you're holding a bucket of water. That bucket is your energy. Every time you give in to someone's demand, every time you let a toxic person bend your will, you're tipping the bucket a little. Drip, drip, drip. And eventually it's empty. But when you set a boundary, when you say no and mean it, you're plugging the leaks. You're keeping your energy for the things that actually matter: your health, your relationships that give back, your goals, your joy. Boundaries are not about keeping others out. They're about keeping yourself intact. And here's the beautiful part: you don't need to announce your boundaries in some big dramatic moment. You live them consistently, quietly, firmly. Over time, people will learn how to treat you based on what you allow. And those who refuse to adapt, they'll leave. They'll fade out because it's no longer easy to drain you. And you didn't have to chase them away. You just had to stop leaving the door wide open. So, if you want toxic people to leave your life on their own, don't argue with them. Don't try to convince them to change. Don't exhaust yourself explaining your worth. Just set the boundary, live it, and stop apologizing for it. The people who are meant to stay will stay. The ones who aren't will remove themselves. That's the power of boundaries. They do the heavy lifting for you. One of the biggest shifts you can make, and one that will almost instantly expose toxic people, is choosing self-respect over approval. And I want you to hear this clearly. The moment you stop chasing approval, the people who only stay in your life because they can control you will start to disappear. Approval is their leverage. It's the carrot they dangle in front of you. They make you believe that if you just give a little more, bend a little further, say yes one more time, then maybe, just maybe, they'll accept you. But the truth is, their approval is never real. It's conditional, temporary, and always tied to what you can do for them. When you decide that your self-respect is more important than their opinion, everything shifts. Because approval is external, it's out there, in their hands, in their moods, in their shifting expectations. But respect that starts here, that's internal. You decide what you're worth. You decide how you're going to let people treat you. And you decide when enough is enough. The toxic person in your life doesn't get to make that call anymore. Here's what happens when you start valuing respect over approval. At first, you're going to feel the tension. You might even feel guilty. You'll notice yourself thinking, what if they don't like me anymore? What if they get upset? What if they think I've changed? And guess what? They will. They'll notice you're not bending like you used to. They'll notice their usual tricks. Guilt, silent treatment, backhanded comments. Don't get the same reaction. That's when the mask slips. That's when you see them clearly. And that's when they start pulling back, because you're no longer feeding their need for control. Now, some of you are probably wondering, but what if I lose them completely? Let me turn that question around. If the only way to keep someone in your life is to betray yourself, did you ever really have them to begin with? Real relationships, healthy relationships, don't require you to shrink yourself. They don't demand that you trade respect for belonging. If someone leaves because you chose to respect yourself, you didn't lose a healthy relationship, you dodged a toxic one. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine you're standing tall, holding a flag that says, "This is who I am, these are my values, this is my line in the sand." The people who genuinely love you, they'll rally around that flag, they'll stand beside you, wave their own, and say, "We see you and we respect you." But the toxic people, they'll roll their eyes, they'll mock you, they'll try to tear that flag down. And when they realize you're not letting go, they'll move on. Because respect is a language they don't want to speak. And here's the part I love. When you stop chasing approval, you gain freedom. You stop walking on eggshells. You stop rehearsing every word before you say it. You stop feeling like you owe everyone an explanation for living your life. You start breathing easier, standing taller, and making choices that actually serve you. That kind of freedom doesn't just push toxic people away. It attracts the right ones in, because confidence, even quiet confidence, is magnetic. Now, let me be honest, this isn't easy at first. Approval seeking is a habit, and for some of us, it's one we've carried since childhood. Maybe you grew up feeling like you had to earn love, like you had to be the peacemaker, the achiever, the fixer. And toxic people can smell that a mile away. They look for the ones who will bend, the ones who will sacrifice themselves for a smile or a pat on the back. But here's what they don't expect. That one day, you'll decide you've had enough. One day, you'll realize that approval is rented and self-respect is owned. And that day, everything starts to change. When you step into that space of self-respect, you don't have to announce it. You don't have to give speeches or justify yourself. You just start living it. And slowly, people adjust. The healthy ones will cheer you on. The toxic ones will leave because without your approval seeking, they have no way to keep you hooked. So the next time you feel that pull, that urge to bend yourself just to keep someone happy, pause and ask yourself, am I choosing their approval or my respect? If the answer is approval, let it go. If it costs you your self-respect, it's too expensive. That's how you win this game. You stop trying to win them, and you start choosing you. One of the hardest lessons to learn when dealing with toxic people is this: you don't have to react to everything they do. In fact, the more calm you stay, the less power they have. Toxic people thrive on pulling you into their chaos. They poke, they prod, they push your buttons because they want a reaction. They want you angry, they want you flustered, they want you explaining yourself for the 100th time, because the moment you react, they're in control. And the moment you stop reacting, they lose the game they've been playing all along. Think about it. How many times have you walked away from a conversation with a toxic person feeling drained, frustrated, maybe even questioning yourself? It's not because they're right, and it's not because you're weak. It's because they baited you into a fight you never needed to be in. They handed you a rope and you picked it up. But what happens if you don't? What happens if instead of tugging, you just drop it? Suddenly, the whole dynamic changes. Staying calm doesn't mean you don't care. It doesn't mean you're letting them win. It means you're protecting your energy and refusing to play a game that was never worth playing. Toxic people are like fire. They need oxygen to burn. And your reaction, your defensiveness, your arguments, that's oxygen. When you stay calm, when you don't give them what they're looking for, the fire dies out. Now, I'm not saying this is easy. In the moment, it's tempting to clap back, to defend yourself, to try and prove your point. But that's what they want. They want you tangled up in explanations, ands, and emotions, because while you're doing that, they're sitting back, satisfied that they still have you hooked. Calm is the opposite of what they expect. Calm is unsettling to them. Calm takes the script out of their hands. Let me give you a picture. Imagine a toxic person throws a grenade into your peace. Your instinct is to throw it back, to yell, to make them understand how wrong they are. But here's the problem: the more you throw it around, the more damage it causes. Staying calm is like letting that grenade roll past you without touching it. No explosion, no damage, just silence. And silence is powerful. Silence makes them face themselves, and most can't handle that. There's a kind of strength in calm that doesn't even need to announce itself. You don't have to raise your voice. You don't have to outwit them. You just refuse to engage in the circus. And when you do that consistently, they get bored. They stop trying. Because what's the point of baiting someone who won't bite? And here's something important. You can practice this. Calm isn't about shutting down your feelings. It's about managing them. It's about pausing before you respond. It's about realizing, I don't have to attend every argument I'm invited to. When they send the snide comment, you breathe. When they push your buttons, you don't let them see you flinch. When they try to spin the story, you don't waste your time unraveling their lies. You let your composure speak for itself. And the more you do this, the more you start to notice the freedom it brings. You don't walk away from conversations replaying every word in your head. You don't waste hours crafting the perfect comeback. You don't feel drained because you never gave them your energy in the first place. Calm is a boundary in action. Calm says, you don't get access to my emotions. You don't get to control how I feel today. Here's the shift: when you stop reacting, you start observing. You see their patterns more clearly. You recognize the manipulation faster. And instead of getting tangled up in it, you step aside. And that perspective, that's where your power really lies. And just like with boundaries, you don't have to announce this change. You don't have to tell them, I'm staying calm from now on. You just do it. You let your stillness frustrate their chaos. You let your peace interrupt their noise. Over time, they'll either adjust or they'll walk away, because toxic people cannot survive in an environment where their drama doesn't land. So when the bait is thrown, when the chaos comes knocking, when the push for reaction feels irresistible, remember this: calm is not weakness, it's control. And the more you choose it, the more toxic people will choose to leave. If you really want to watch toxic people leave your life on their own, shift your focus toward growth instead of negativity. Toxic people survive in environments where everything is about problems, complaints, gossip, and drama. That's their fuel. But when you start investing your time and energy into things that elevate you, your goals, your health, your relationships that give back, your personal development, you change the entire atmosphere around you. And toxic people can't breathe in that kind of air. Here's why. Growth is uncomfortable for people who choose to stay stuck. If you've ever noticed, toxic people tend to repeat the same stories, the same grudges, the same excuses. They stay on the same level because that's where they're comfortable. But when you start climbing, when you start talking about vision instead of gossip, when you're spending your evenings learning instead of arguing, they start feeling left out. Not because you pushed them away, but because they don't fit the environment you're building. Let me give you a picture. Imagine you're standing in a room filled with loud noise, complaints, bitterness, drama. That's where toxic people thrive. But then you step into a different room. This one is filled with books, new ideas, uplifting conversations, plans for the future. It's brighter, lighter, healthier. Now here's the question: which room do you want to stay in? And here's the answer: you don't have to drag anyone with you. You just move rooms, you elevate your environment, and the people who only function in the noise, they won't follow you. That's the beauty of focusing on growth. It's not about fighting toxic people. It's not about convincing them to change. It's about outgrowing the space they live in. And the more you do, the more obvious the separation becomes. They'll start saying things like, "You've changed." They'll roll their eyes when you talk about something positive. They'll try to pull you back into the old conversations, the old patterns. But you'll notice their words won't land like they used to, because when your energy is invested in building something, you don't have much left to waste on tearing things down. This is where a lot of people get stuck. They think growth means you need to make some huge leap overnight, quit your job, move cities, reinvent yourself completely. But growth doesn't have to look dramatic. Growth can be as simple as choosing to spend your commute listening to a podcast that inspires you instead of venting about coworkers. It can be as simple as choosing to work out instead of staying up late scrolling. It can be as simple as picking up the phone to call someone who uplifts you instead of someone who drains you. These small choices add up, and before you know it, you've created momentum in your life. And toxic people, they don't like momentum because momentum leaves them behind. The shift happens inside you first. When you start thinking differently, you start speaking differently. And when you start speaking differently, you start attracting different kinds of people. That's why toxic people naturally start to pull away. They no longer see themselves reflected in you. And that's not something you need to grieve. That's something you can be grateful for. Because every time someone who doesn't value your growth walks away, it creates space for someone who does. And let's be honest, Growth isn't just about pushing toxic people out. It's about pulling yourself forward. It's about becoming the kind of person who doesn't get hooked by negativity because you're too busy building something better. That's the kind of mindset that doesn't just protect you from toxic people, it makes them irrelevant. So instead of asking, how do I get rid of them? Start asking, how do I build me? Because the answer to the first question takes care of itself when you answer the second. When your eyes are fixed on where you're going, the people who refuse to move forward will stop trying to keep up. They'll leave because they don't want to climb. And you'll keep going lighter, freer, stronger. If you truly want to see toxic people walk away on their own, stop feeding their negativity and start feeding your growth. One of the biggest mistakes people make when dealing with toxic individuals is falling into defensiveness. The toxic person says something cutting, manipulative, or flat out untrue, and suddenly you find yourself scrambling to explain, justify, and prove your worth. You're trying to convince them of the truth. But the reality is, they already know what they're doing. They don't need more explanations. They don't need more proof. They thrive on the fact that you feel the need to defend yourself. That's how they know they still have control. The shift happens when you learn to communicate with directness instead of defensiveness. Directness is simple. It's clean. It doesn't dance around the truth, and it doesn't waste time trying to earn their approval. Directness sounds like, "That's not accurate," or "I'm not going to engage in that," or "This is what I'm willing to do." Notice what's missing: the long-winded explanations, the desperate attempts to make them see your heart, the 5-paragraph essays about why you're not the villain they're painting you to be. Toxic people don't care about any of that. They only care that they still have your attention. When you stop defending and start being direct, you take away their power, because now they're not pulling you into a maze of words and accusations. You're stepping out of the maze entirely. They can twist, they can spin, they can exaggerate, but your response doesn't change. Directness shuts the door they keep trying to push open. Here's the key difference: defensiveness is about proving yourself to them. Directness is about standing firm in yourself. Defensiveness says, "Please believe me." Directness says, "This is the truth, whether you accept it or not." And that shift unsettles toxic people because their whole playbook depends on you getting tangled up in defending your character, your intentions, or your decisions. When you stop playing that game, the playbook is useless. Let me give you a picture. Imagine someone throws mud at you. Your first instinct might be to scoop it up and throw it back, or worse, to stand there trying to explain why you didn't deserve it. But mud is mud. It doesn't need an essay. The best response is to simply wipe it off and move forward. That's what direct communication does. It wipes off the mud without turning the moment into a battle. And yes, it takes practice. Because many of us were raised to over-explain, to soften every no, to justify every choice so nobody could possibly misunderstand us. But the truth is, toxic people don't misunderstand you, they misrepresent you. And no amount of defending will change that. The more you try, the more they know they've gotten to you. Directness ends that cycle. This doesn't mean being harsh, cold, or rude. Directness can be calm, steady, even kind. It simply means you're clear about your boundaries and unwilling to let someone drag you into unnecessary conflict. A direct response is short, it's confident, and it's final. And here's the beauty of it: when you start practicing this, you'll notice that your peace increases. Conversations don't spiral out of control the way they used to. You don't walk away exhausted, replaying what you should have said. You leave knowing you said exactly what needed to be said. and nothing more. Over time, toxic people start to realize something. They realize you're no longer their playground. They realize they can't hook you with accusations, guilt trips, or half-truths. And that's when they start backing away. Because the truth is, toxic people don't like environments where manipulation doesn't work. They don't stick around when directness shuts down their tactics. And this is what's important to understand. You don't have to prove your worth to anyone. You don't have to explain your every move to people who have no intention of respecting you. You don't have to clear your name in every conversation. If someone is determined to misunderstand you, let them. Directness isn't about changing their mind. It's about protecting your peace. So the next time you're tempted to explain yourself into exhaustion, pause and ask, am I defending or am I being direct? If you're defending, you're giving away power. If you're being direct, you're standing in it. And when you stand in it long enough, toxic people will no longer see you as someone they can control. They'll move on in search of someone else. That's the strength of directness. It's the clarity that makes manipulation impossible. Respect is a two-way street, and one of the clearest ways to deal with toxic people is to model the kind of respect you expect while being willing to walk away when it's not given back. See, toxic people thrive in relationships where the standard is low, where disrespect is tolerated, where manipulation is excused, where you keep making room for their behavior because you're afraid of losing them. The moment you raise the standard and live it out consistently, something changes. The ones who want to stay in your life will rise to meet it. The ones who don't will eventually walk away because the environment is no longer comfortable for them. Modeling respect doesn't mean you cater to them. It doesn't mean you become overly nice or bend yourself to prove you're better. It means you live out what respect looks like: calm communication, honesty, boundaries, self-control. You don't fight dirty just because they do. You don't throw insults just because they threw one at you. You don't mirror their chaos. Instead, you show them that you operate on a different level, that you won't compromise your integrity just to win an argument. And that consistency, it speaks louder than anything you could say. Here's what happens when you choose respect. It exposes their lack of it. It shines a light on the games they play, and it makes their behavior harder to justify. If you're calm, steady, and clear, and they're dramatic, manipulative, and cruel, the contrast becomes obvious, not just to you, but to everyone around you. Toxic people don't like that exposure. They prefer to blur the lines, to drag you into the mud so they can say, "See, you're just like me." But when you refuse to step into the mud, they lose that defense. And then comes the second part, the willingness to walk away, because respect without follow through is just words. You can say, "I deserve better," all day long, but if you keep entertaining someone who shows you they don't respect you, then your actions are telling a different story. Walking away isn't about punishing them. It's about protecting you. It's about drawing the line in a way that leaves no confusion. Now, walking away doesn't always mean cutting someone off completely or slamming doors in dramatic fashion. Sometimes it's as simple as disengaging from conversations that go nowhere. Sometimes it's limiting your availability. Sometimes it's physically removing yourself from a situation where you're being disrespected. Other times, yes, it may mean ending a relationship altogether. But in every case, the message is the same: respect is the standard, and if it's not there, neither am I. I know this is easier said than done. Walking away feels heavy, especially when it's from someone you've cared about for years, or someone you thought would change, or someone you hoped would finally see your worth. But ask yourself this: what's the cost of staying? Every time you excuse disrespect, every time you shrink to keep the peace, every time you silence your own needs to avoid conflict, you're teaching yourself that your dignity is negotiable, and it's not. Respect starts with how you treat yourself. When you show yourself respect by honoring your boundaries, by speaking your truth, by refusing to accept less than you deserve, you automatically set the tone for how others can treat you. And here's the thing: healthy people will adjust to that tone. They'll respect it. They'll even appreciate it because it creates clarity and trust. Toxic people, they'll resist it. They'll push back, argue, guilt trip, and try to tear it down. But when they realize you're serious, that you'd rather walk alone than be disrespected, they'll fade away. And yes, they might call you selfish. They might paint you as cold or uncaring. That's what toxic people do when they lose control. But let me tell you something: choosing respect is not selfish, it's necessary. It's how you create space for healthy love, for genuine connection, for peace that isn't constantly interrupted by chaos. So when you think about the people in your life right now, ask yourself who rises to the standard of respect and who constantly ignores it. And more importantly, how willing are you to act on the answer? Because the truth is, you don't need to force toxic people out. You don't need to scream or slam doors. All you have to do is live with respect, demand it in return, and walk away when it's not there. That's when you'll see it. Those who value you will step closer, and those who don't will step back. And you won't have to chase anyone, because the wrong ones will remove themselves.